Hey, how's everybody doing? This is Jeremy Langlois coming to you live from Houmas House Estate and Gardens, and on top of that, coming to you from our new facility here at Houmas House, our Great River Road Steamboat Museum, which will be opening up on June 1st. We can't wait to have everybody come and visit. It's a beautiful, large museum, plenty of space for everybody to come and gather around and see some of our exhibits that we have going here. This building has been 3 years in the making. Through its construction, and I can't wait to share with you just how incredible it's came out and just all the awesome things and interesting exhibits that they have throughout the entire museum. Today we're coming to you in front of our American flag here. This flag is one of the many great exhibits that we have here. It's a flag from 1863. It's a 35-star flag that was created when the 35th state in the Union, West Virginia, was inducted into the Union. And this actual flag is original, and it was flown at Fort Jackson, 80 miles south of New Orleans. So that's just one of the many awesome exhibits that you'll see throughout the entire museum. Again, we open up on June 1st. Can't wait to see you then. With that said, though, I'm a chef, so I'm here to cook, not be a historian. So I wanted to do something different in our cooking demo today. I wanted to share with y'all something that might be unique to some of you viewers at home, or something that some of you guys might already be incorporating into your home cooking, and that's cooking in the style known as sous vide. And if you've been one of these people who follow cooking or watch different cooking shows on television or this, that, and other, you've seen over the last 10 years, you'll see chefs start bringing up this term, oh, well, I'm going to cook my duck breast sous vide. And all that is it's a method of cooking, but it's absolutely different than probably anything that you might be used to doing at home. It requires, which is always fun for me from a chef, a couple gadgets, but I'm going to explain to you how we can do it on a high-tech side and just a low-tech side. If you want to experiment with it at home, you can absolutely do that. But cooking sous vide is a style where you cook anything. It could be, you can do ice cream custards, you can do fish, you can do shellfish, you can do meats, you can do vegetables, you can pretty much cook anything that you can think to cook with. You can cook sous vide. It's just a method of cooking in a water bath. And the term sous vide itself, sous, S-O-U-S-V-I-D-E, sous vide is a French term that just simply means under vacuum, because what we do is we take and we vacuum seal whatever we're cooking in a vacuum bag, and it gets cooked under vacuum. Well, why do we want to vacuum seal something? Or why do we want to, why would we even want to do this? What's wrong with just cooking something traditionally? Well, like anything, different forms of cooking is going to give you different results, and there's different variations on how ultimately your end dish ends up as. One great thing that I'm going to demonstrate to you today is we're going to be cooking some lamb. Now, you can very easily swap this dish out for at home. You could do steak. Any steak that you could think of, say a ribeye, a New York strip, a filet mignon. We're going to be using a loin of lamb and rack of lamb as well. And why does cooking it sous vide? What advantages do I get when I cook something sous vide? Well, first of all is what's the process? And I'll talk to that, and then we'll talk about the advantages of cooking. Well, over here you can see I have a water bath, and you can use any container. Some people will just use a pot that they connect this device to. This device is called a thermal circulator. And this is just an entry-level device that you can order on Amazon or anywhere online. And, you know, whenever I ordered my first sous vide machine, probably about 8 or 10 years ago, they were about $1,400 for a big commercial sous vide machine. Whereas now you can get them starting at around anywhere from $80 to $100 on websites or local cooking stores as well. And well, what does this device do? It's very simple. You connect it to a container with water, you set your temperature, and you press start. And it's that simple. And it's going to hold the water to the very exact temperature that you set it to. So right now we have the temperature set to 132 degrees, and this a thermal circulator, it's going to heat up the water to 132 degrees and hold it perfectly at that temperature. The circulator part, it's got a little fan and a pump, and it's going to pump the water around. So the entire vessel, this water here, when I put it in my hands, it's hot, but it's 132 degrees exactly. Well, what's up with that temperature, and what do I get from that? Well, whenever it comes to cooking in sous vide, it's all about you set your temperature, you vacuum seal what you want to cook, and then you submerge it into your bath. And you need to ask yourself this: how do you like your steak cooked? Do you like your steak cooked rare, mid-well, well done? Well, those are all internal temperatures that you're cooking to whenever you cook your steak. So if you're like me and like your steak kind of mid-rare, medium, well, that cooking temperature is going to be about 132 or 130 degrees internal temperature whenever you cook your steak. You put your steak on the grill, and whenever the inside, the very middle is 132 degrees, that's a perfect medium. You can pull it off, and that's going to be a perfectly medium steak. Well, since I want to cook my lamb to 132 degrees, a perfect medium, now I know I'm going to get a perfectly medium steak because this water is perfectly set to 132 degrees. So what's cool about this, if you think about it, it's impossible for this to overcook because the temperature never rises above 132 degrees. So whenever you're cooking on, say, a stovetop or a grill, well, that grill is 500 degrees, and you're just searing the outside of the meat until eventually that temperature gets into the middle of the meat, and then you get your temperature. But what's also interesting about this, if you're a food nut and a science nut like me, when it comes to these interesting things, is because it's set to 132 degrees, you're not going to have what's known as a gradation. And what I mean by that is whenever you cook let's say a steak, a filet mignon on the grill, the outside's going to be charred, and then the next layer in, if you were to cut that steak in half, will be gray, then it will go to pink, then it will go to red, and then that's your center, and then it'll go back to pink, gray, seared on the outside. That's the gradation of the meat whenever you look at it. Well, whenever you're cooking sous vide, it's going to be perfectly 132 degrees all the way through. So whenever I sear it, the meat is going to be cooked exactly to that temperature from the outside all the way to the end. So to me, I just find that absolutely just an interesting thing, and that's to me one of the advantages of cooking like this. Now in this demo, we're about to get started. I'm just scratching the surface to what you can do. So if this is something that I know this might be different to you. If you have a lot of questions, leave a comment on the video. I check them all the time, and I'll be happy to reply to any of your questions that you might have. But with that said, and other than that, another great tool if you're concerned, if you do get into this, and we'll talk about it more as we go, but we're going to get cooking. Google is your friend when it comes to this. So like, let's say, since you could do a beautiful fillet of salmon. So if you were to buy a salmon at home and say, well, I want to try cooking salmon in sous vide, but I don't know what temperature to set in, Google's your friend. Press look up on Google, and chances are someone's already got it figured out. I know I've said a lot. If you've got questions, leave comments, but let's go ahead and get started. First, what I got here is we love serving rack of lamb here at Houmas House, and one of our signature dishes that's been on the menu since day one is our community coffee marinated rack of lamb. Now, the origin of this dish was all the way back in 2003. I was lucky enough to go to a Dorona, Distinguished Restaurants of North America event in Montreal, and I was served this venison that was made with a chocolate sauce. And that might sound absolutely unusual, but it was venison, and it was served with not sweetened, unsweetened chocolate that was folded into the demi-glace, and I just thought that was an absolutely unique flavor pairing. So having that dish, it got my mind thinking, well, I'm always looking to take something like this beautiful Colorado rack of lamb. We get Colorado lamb, not New Zealand lamb. Although New Zealand lamb is very common, I prefer Colorado rack of lamb. I think the flavor and the eye is much bigger. I'm always looking to incorporate Louisiana flavors. And to me, there's no better Louisiana flavor than community coffee. Community coffee is just an iconic Louisiana flavor. We serve community coffee at our restaurant, and I'm always looking to incorporate those flavors into all of our cuisine. So I decided to pair these two, and it just worked. It was an experiment in the kitchen, and it just worked. So what I do is, how we normally do it is we just take our lamb, and then we brew a double batch of coffee, meaning we add double the amount of grounds than we typically would do. We brew the coffee, and we get a really strong batch of coffee that just has a really strong flavor. And then we let that coffee come down to at least room temperature, or chill it is actually better because you don't want to pour hot coffee on your protein. And we just submerge that coffee in the lamb, and then we let that marinate overnight for about 24 hours, and it steeps those flavors into the lamb. It's very subtle, but it's a very beautiful flavor that just matches perfectly with it, and it goes great with the lamb. And then normally we would take that lamb, and how we traditionally would have done it is we would then roast that lamb in the oven or on the grill, slice it, beautiful. But today we're going to cook it sous vide. So let's talk about how we can take that same concept and then change it to the sous vide form. So what I have here is, this is actually the loin of lamb. This is the same cut of meat, but just cut off of the rack. And I like doing that as well. I love the chop sometime, but also the loin is great too, because you can really trim off some of the fat and the silver skin, which is kind of these chewy bits. We can just get that out of here, and we can trim all that off. I'm going to season this with salt and pepper. But since we're cooking sous vide, one interesting thing that you can actually do is you can put the marinade into the bag that we're going to be serving it in. So instead of cooking it overnight, we're actually going to cook this lamb in its marinade. So that is one unique thing that you can do through this process. And what we'll do is, I'm actually going to cut this in half, because we're going to show you two different ways. But how we would do is we would take these vacuum seal bags, and look guys, vacuum seals, these bags, they're starting to become common. Almost all stores will sell something like this, cooking stores, but even hunting stores, they sell vacuum sealers in bags. We can put that lamb in there. We would just a splash of marinade, because the vacuum seal will draw out some of the liquid, and we don't want to have too much liquid. And we would take this to our vacuum seal machine, seal this up, and then we would have a bag sealed, and then we would submerge this into our water bath with our sous vide circulator set to 132 degrees for medium. If you wanted mid-well, 145 degrees, well done, 155 degrees, mid-rare, 125 degrees. Basically, every 10 degrees is going to be another step in either direction. But that's what we have here. We'll come back to this. And we just submerge it in here. Now let's talk about time. I always like almost anything, well, again, Google's your friend on certain proteins, but on a protein like this, because shellfish take a lot shorter time, but anything like this, I like to leave a steak that's about this size, about an hour. And again, what's so great about this is it is absolutely foolproof. You're cooking right now, it's almost done. You don't have to check it. You don't have to do anything. It is just going to slowly come up and slowly cook to that 132 degrees that this water bath is set to. Now I know what you're saying, Jeremy, I don't know about all this, and first of all, before I make this investment in getting all these gadgets and stuff in these vacuum sealers and all these gadgets, that's just way too much work. I might want to try this, but how can I do this at home and not have all this investment of all this initial stuff? Well, you come to the right place. I'm going to show you. This is high tech. This is high tech. It's easy. This is a little more work, but you can do it today at home. Instead of a vacuum bag, we are going to take a Ziploc bag. Instead of a circulator, I just have a pot with a thermometer attached to it, and I'm watching it. Now, this is where the most work is going to come in, is managing your temperature. If it's too cold, well, obviously we want to heat the water up. What do we do if the water gets too hot? Well, that's a great question. I have a bowl of ice here, so if all of a sudden I see the temperature of that water starting to rise above 132 degrees, I put a couple ice cubes into the water, and it's going to lower that temperature. Now, instead of the vacuum seal bag, watch this. We're just going to take a regular old Ziploc bag. I'm going to drop my lamb loin down into it. Little splash of our marinade, our community coffee marinade. And then we're just going to, I'm going to use this since it's right here, but you would want a large vessel of water. And what we're going to do is I'm going to seal up most of this bag. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to submerge the bag. And what's going to happen is the water is going to force the air out of the bag. I get it almost all the way down. And then once I got the whole bag submerged in the water, boom, I'm going to zip it up. And now we have a kind of makeshift vacuum bag. Super simple. You can do this at home. We're going to drop this right into our water bath, which I'm watching the temperature. You want to be careful when you're doing this at home with this, because the outside of the pot will get hot. It can melt your bag, but we're just going to gently submerge it. And now you're just going to, for about an hour, you want to check it every 5-10 minutes to make sure. Now, this isn't going to hold that water accurately, but if you wanted to experiment at home and just give this a try to see if this is something you're interested in doing and a method you want to try out, this is a great way to do it. So we've let our lamb cook. It's been in for an hour, so this lamb is ready. Now, it's been in for an hour. You want to have an hour minimum. However, you can't overcook it. That's the absolute beautiful thing about this. It's impossible to overcook it because the water itself never heats up above the temperature you're trying to get it to. So what we can do is we're going to take it out. Now, if you look at this right now, The meat is perfectly cooked. However, if you look at this, it's kind of just got a gray, bland look at it. It doesn't have that great caramelization on the outside. So all you have to do to get that is just come over to a skillet with some olive oil in it. And we're going to cut this lamb out of the bag. And we're going to go right into our skillet and just get a sear on the outside. We're just looking to get some quick color on the outside so we have that beautiful crust on the outside of our meat. Then the inside of our meat is going to be perfectly cooked. So we're going to let that just sear. While that's cooking, let's go ahead and get a couple sides going. So what I did was earlier is I just went ahead and I grabbed a couple sweet potatoes and I just peeled them, cubed them, boiled them until the potatoes themselves were soft, strained them out, and we're just going to make some quick rustic sweet potato mash. So I'm just going to add a couple ingredients. Your preference at home, I don't like my sweet potatoes too sweet. Some people I always joke, sometimes I go to restaurants and they have sweet potato casserole. To me, it's way too sweet, and I almost think it's a dessert course and not a side. So I like to add a little bit of steamed cane syrup, but not too much. I only like to have just a touch of that sweetness, but just a touch of that. So I got butter, melted butter, steamed cane syrup, salt and pepper, and I'm just going to take a whisk and I'm just going to kind of mash it. Just kind of mash it up. Them potatoes are soft, so just looking to get a rustic kind of mash. It might still have a couple lumps in it. That is absolutely okay. You can kind of whip it around. If you wanted this pureed more, you can run it through a food processor or really kind of mash it up, but that's going to be good. I'm going to come over to my lamb. It's got a good crust on the outside. When we're searing off the lamb, starting to get some good browning, we're just looking to get color on each side. You don't want to sear it too long because then you're going to overcook your meat, but you can go ahead and just sear it for just a little while. So that's almost ready. Let's get our plate ready. We got our sweet potato mash ready to go. One thing we also did was, let's talk vegetables. Since we're sous vide, just so simple, we have some beautiful little heirloom carrots that we had in the restaurant. I did these earlier, and I cooked them for 1 hour with my circulator set to 185 degrees for these vegetables, and for about 45 minutes, and that just made these carrots nice and tender. So now, I just put them in the bag with some butter, just whole lob of butter, a little salt and pepper on the carrots, dropped them in my bag, sealed them up, dropped them in my bag at 185 degrees for about 45 minutes, and it made a nice kind of al dente tender carrot. So I'm going to open up some of those. We're going to use some of those carrots. And you see, once you start doing this, you realize you can just drop it in, walk away, and then right before you're ready to eat, you just sear off your meat last second, and you're ready to go. So I got some good color. Look at that. Got some good color right here on my lamb. And we're just going to let that rest while we start to plate up. We'll slice that last second. So I'm going to come to my plate. A little scoop of our sweet potatoes right there. Let's get some of these great carrots all around. I love these carrots. And we get all different kind of color carrots here, these heirloom carrots. We get golden carrots, we get traditional orange carrots, we get these purple carrots that are really great. So we're going to put some of those on the plate. Now let's come over to our meat. Again, this was set at 132 degrees. We're just going to slice this into a couple medallions. And again, the meat itself is perfectly cooked to what I want it to. And again, it's how you want to cook it. But we're going to come right here. And then now we're going to fan some of this lamb right over these sweet potatoes. But you can see it's nice. It's got a great pink color all the way through, which is what I'm looking for. Look at that right there. Let's see if the camera can catch that. But it's all the way pink, all the way through. We're going to put just a splash of, we got some demi-glace, any sauce that you like. This is just a veal stock reduction, but that could be good to go here. But at the restaurant, we put a little of this veal sauce right on top of it. Couple sprigs of fresh thyme. Thyme and lamb go hand in hand, so this is some thyme right out of our garden. And there you go, guys. That is our sous vide loin of lamb with some sweet potatoes, heirloom carrots, all cooked sous vide. And again, if y'all have any questions, please feel free, hit me up in the comments. So great to have y'all here. Our Riverboat Steamboat Museum opens up on June 1st. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank y'all.